citizen, same vision is for equal rights and justice for the people them. What's happening to this beautiful world that we're living in? World citizen, lift up your voice.
Welcome to another episode of the People Powered Planet podcast, where each week we have outstanding solutionaries talking about how to solve some of the problems and create what Gary called in our movie, the People Powered Planet. Now today we have an extraordinary opportunity. I watched this amazing film at a film festival, online film festival called Youth versus Gov. And it was just stunning. I mean, here they were, 21 young people, ages from 8 to 19, and their homes had been flooded their land ruined, farms engulfed in flames by forest fires. And from all over the country, they got together and they brought a suit against the federal government for denying them a future. It was actually purposeful government policies that they knew were destroying our environment. And that's what makes it really a phenomenal film. I thought one of the most compelling environmental films that I've ever seen. So let me just tell you a little bit about our guests, and then we'll show you a short clip from the film, and we'll roll right into it. Now, Sahara Valentine, who you see here, she was a plaintiff on this case when she was only 10 years old when she started. And we're so glad she's here with us today. And director Christy Cooper, she's an award-winning cinematographer, but she's also a PhD scientist. So she really knows her stuff, and it really comes through in the film. You see, I thought she did an amazing job of taking, government data and bringing it to life on the screen in such a powerful, compelling way to show the reality of this question beyond doubt, that climate change is real and is intentional, and is actually, intentional government policies are leading to it. And it's really a very inspiring film because of the kids that are part of it. It's kind of an emotional roller coaster that really draws you in a very powerful, emotional way. So let me just start by asking Melanie to play a little clip of the film, and then we'll go into Christy telling us a little more about the film.
Read it 6,000 times, you get the
We must stand with the 21 kids demanding government action on hashtag climate change today.
That's it?
That is Leo DiCaprio.
Are you sure that's him?
Let me see here. He has 15.9 million followers. It's probably the same one.
That was nice.
It's been posted for 10 minutes. There's already people at the courthouse right now. There's like people standing outside.
As you see, they were off to an exciting start walking into the courthouse to all these kids bringing this incredible suit. Tell us a little bit more about it and about the lead attorney who we saw in that little clip, and a brief overview of what the story was, Christy.
Yeah, so these young people, Sahara is one of the 21 youth plaintiffs. They filed this case in August of 2015 against President Obama and various agencies within his administration. And the scene that you just showed was actually after, so let me back up a little bit. Right after they filed their lawsuit, the entire fossil fuel industry filed a motion to intervene in the case because they wanted to help the government defend their position. And the courts allowed that. So for a long period of time, this case was the plaintiffs against the government and the entire fossil fuel industry, which is just crazy to think that, it couldn't be more obvious that the fossil fuel industry and the government are, working together and are partners in this. And in April of 2016, Judge Coffin dismissed the government's motion to dismiss the case, which meant the plaintiffs won that first action. And that was appealed. And so this hearing that you see right there in the little clip is when we go into Judge Aiken's courtroom in September of 2016. And this this moment in the courtroom is a real pivotal moment in the story and in the case. Judge Aiken gave her decision 2 days after Trump was elected on November 10th. And she had just such a unbelievably compelling, beautifully written decision declaring that these young people do have a constitutional right to a stable climate system capable of sustaining human life. And it's, this was really a very important moment in the case that really set up, I think, a lot of hope for the plaintiffs, for the story, showing that we do have some judges and some courts that really understand the constitutionality of this. And then the journey goes from there.
Now, tell us about the lead attorney and what her constitutional argument is.
So Julia Olson is the lead attorney on this case. She is also the executive director of Our Children's Trust, which is the legal nonprofit that represents these young people. She founded her organization in 2010 with the sole intention of representing young people in climate litigations, holding their governments accountable. So this case is based on, there is a public trust doctrine element to the case, but there's also a constitutional element, the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment. So the plaintiffs are claiming that the government has violated their constitutional rights to life, liberty, property, and personal security, and that through the government's willful actions in subsidizing, promoting, allowing the fossil fuel industry to thrive and prosper has threatened their fundamental rights to a safe future. The young people are also disproportionately harmed. And this is also part of the constitutional claim that Julia built with this legal framework, is that young people are a group in society that is disproportionately impacted by climate change. And they don't have the political power that adults do.
And in the film, you showed powerful statements by every single president, except the very last one before this, but by Reagan on, powerful statements stating virtually exactly what the kids are saying in this case. How could that be?
Well, I think that's when Gus Speth talks about this period in history as the greatest dereliction of our civic responsibility, I think he really cuts to the core of that. We have been hearing rhetoric for over 60 years of how important, starting with Nixon. He was very progressive in getting us the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the EPA, NOAA, so many of these standards that we now rely on, scientific standards that we rely on to protect our environment. And so there's been decades of rhetoric about how important it is to protect the environment and protect the future for young people. But it's always been in direct, opposition to actually the actions that they've taken. And most likely because there's, the fossil fuel industry is such a powerful entity, and there's so much money that goes into our political system, and so many of our politicians are bought and sold, and so many of our policies are bought and sold by the industries. So it's really, it's really connecting those dots and understanding that the government has not had its people and their best interests as a priority. It's definitely been, we live in a capitalistic system, and this is all about making sure that the industries are profitable.
Well, speaking of the profitability, at first people would say, well, isn't climate just the responsibility of all of us? How can we single out government policies as causing it, especially when you hear all that nice rhetoric by the politicians? But what is maybe Melanie can call up on the screen that fantastic chart you had showing. I mean, the first question would be, well, really, is it really the federal government that is making this all happen? And then in this chart you showed that the Pentagon is spending that $599. The Pentagon is spending as the largest discretionary part of the federal budget. Discretionary meaning it doesn't count Social Security that you have to pay out anyway, and so on. but all the month they actually allocate each year in Congress, the biggest amount of all is Pentagon spending. And yet in this incredible chart you're showing us, we're seeing the fossil fuel industry getting even more. How can that be?
That's a good question. You know, we tallied up this is, you know, part of the evidence that is presented in the case, and I believe that this data is based off of 2016 data, and you know, this was really to show the audience, to really hit it home that, you know, we don't really talk. We don't talk, when we talk about the budget, we don't talk about how much money is going to support the fossil fuel industry. And there are direct and indirect fossil fuel subsidies. So indirect fossil fuel subsidies would be, for instance, breaks that they get on taxes, or fees that they don't have to pay for certain infrastructure that they create, or transportation fees, et cetera. And the direct subsidies are literally the taxpayer dollar that is going into their pocket. And I believe in the film, this is just the basic graphic that was used to create our animation, but in the film, you know, we show, there's another stamp that pops up and it shows that every single man, woman, and child in the US, it's over $2,000 in tax revenue that goes to the fossil fuel industry.
What? I paid $2,000 for the fossil fuel industry to destroy
every year. Every year. Yes.
That's incredible. Well, yeah, that's an incredible figure. It really hits home in a powerful way. And, you know, when you think about it, you hear about piecemeal about these things. Like you'll hear, okay, this oil company bought this huge patch of land that'll make them billions, and they bought it, you know, on a special tax auction where they got it for, you know, pennies. I mean, and you think, well, gee, that really, that's screwy. But then when you add that up, you realize, wow, that's an even bigger chunk of the budget than the Pentagon, which is already,
or education.
And then, of course, education is down there like nothing. And, you know, that shows you where terrible priorities are, because actually the Pentagon is the largest source of pollution and environmental damage, and of course threatens nuclear destruction, which is the total environmental destruction of our planet. Those two together, it's really troubling and pretty incredible that young people who have a right to a future took this on. With that, maybe we could turn a little bit to Sahara. Sahara, here you were 10 years old, and you're going to take on the federal government in a lawsuit.
Yeah, I know. It was an odd thing for a 10-year-old. I mean, I got an email from Julia, the lead lawyer, asking if I wanted to be a plaintiff on this lawsuit, and I had no idea how long it would be for sure. It ended up being many more years than I thought it would be, but in the end, I am definitely glad that I said yes.
How long did it go on, the case?
Well, it's still going right now, so it's been just over 5 years, I think. Yeah,
5.5 years.
5.5.
Partly because the government's dragging it out.
Actually, it's 6.5. It's almost 6.5 years now.
Oh my goodness. Yep. Yeah, and the government is definitely dragging it out for sure.
So now, what led you to want to do this? I mean, you know, other 10-year-old kids are playing with their friends, other things. What led you to take on the U.S. government?
Yeah, that's a good question. I originally, I learned about what climate change even was at around 8 or 9 years old. I went to a camp led by Julia, and I think Our Children's Trust was like putting it on. And in that camp was also Avery and Hazel and Zealand and Kelsey Juliana, and those are all other fellow plaintiffs of mine that also live in Eugene. Well, they were to be plaintiffs. They weren't plaintiffs yet. So I had already gotten to meet some of them, which was really cool. And then after I learned about what climate change was, I was pretty devastated, and I started talking to friends and family. I wrote a letter to the editor, and I testified at city council. But then I got to a point where I was like, I want to do more, but I don't really know what to do. And that's when Julia sent me the email asking me if I wanted to be a plaintiff on this lawsuit. And I was like, this is perfect timing. Yes, I would love to.
Cool. So, what were some of the other kids who were like? Were they people in your area, or who else was in this suit?
Yeah, for sure. So it's based in Eugene. So there are 21 youth plaintiffs, and the majority, not the majority of them, but a decent amount are from Eugene. So I just mentioned a few names, but we have people, we have someone in Alaska, Nathan. We have someone from Hawaii. We have Louisiana, New York, Florida, people from all over the U.S. And it's a big group, and there's obviously a lot of distance between us. And so the first time we all got together, it was weird because we didn't know each other. And I remember we sat in a circle and did some sort of name game thing to get to know each other. And I was like, what's going on? But now after the years, we've all grown really close. And obviously with COVID, we haven't been able to see each other in person, which is really sad. But I feel really close to all of them, and we just feel like a big family right now. It's really sweet.
Well, I think we have a little short clip of your family, and I think it starts. Tell us about Levi, who it starts with.
Yeah, for sure. So Levi joined when he was 8, and he's 13 now. And where he lives in his lifetime is supposed to disappear. He lives on an island off of Florida. And he's already lived through many hurricanes. And so I think the clip you're about to see is what he does when a hurricane comes and he feels really scared.
This is my all-time favorite place to go. When I was scared because there was the hurricane, I came up here, and this is where I felt safe. It's because I knew if it flooded, that it couldn't wreck anything here and everything. So I knew that I could trust this area right here. Crap, this is new. It's very frightening and disturbing. You see this giant tree down in one of my best friend's yard. I've lived with the hurricanes my whole entire life. And even though it's reality, it's really scary.
All of our traditions and everything is based here. And a lot of our origin stories are from here. We can't just leave because just too sacred for us.
It's all been a matter of choices. And our feelings of despair and dread and anxiety is all because of choices that we had no participation in.
Everything could have changed. Like really before I was born. I was born in 71.
I think 1971 will be known as the year of action for the future generations of America.
The history of this whole period has got to be the saddest story ever told. This huge failure to rise to the moment. I think it's the greatest dereliction of civic responsibility in the history of the Republic.
When I look back over that period of time, I think in some sense I've failed to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. So I'm very gratified that somebody can make use of my documents.
This is why we need trial, because this story has to come out. And government can come in and make their case if they want. But a judge needs to hear from both sides. Because if it's as bad as we think it is and all the evidence we have indicates, it's the biggest crime against humanity ever. And it's a constitutional violation by any standard.
Biggest crime against humanity ever. And, when you see the film and you see the masterful way that Christy took all this incredible government data that, you know, could be very boring, and she has it come at you in these very exciting, dramatic ways, and it just hits you so hard that you really realize that this was completely known. I mean, every step they took that was illegal and criminal, they took knowing it was illegal and criminal, knowing it would could destroy the entire planet, or I was on a path toward destroying that, and at the same time did it because of these financial interests, because they wouldn't stay in power. It's the constant compromise. Well, if I don't give on this, I can't get the other thing, and the power of these industries. So basically, you know, I think the key point is that if we are the ones that are actually subsidizing our own destruction, and somehow we've got to find a way to rise to the plate, and you kids are doing it, and to find our power as people, because, you know, it's all something that ultimately every constitution says, you know, is right, that we the people are the source of government. It's not something outside, it's from us. And if our old systems are hurting us, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence says it's the right of the people to institute new government. That's why here we're talking about how do we the people get together and use new interactive tools in the people-powered planet to, and you've heard some of the other speakers here like Merle and others on that, on how do we begin to actually create a way to rise above the nation states that are leading to our own demise. We're seeing some steps forward, certainly in the environmental area, but not nearly enough for the super danger we're facing, because for every step forward, you know, we're facing the power of this mega industry. What do you see, Christy, as a way to move forward, and what do you see as the role of your film can play in helping to alert people to that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've learned so much through this process of following this case. And prior to working on Youth v. Gov, I was working with some of the state plaintiffs that Julia was working with. She filed legal actions in every state across the country on Mother's Day in 2011. And those state plaintiffs had their own stories that I was part of a group documenting that, and we created a series of 10 short films around that. So this has been like a long journey for me. It's a 10-year journey of learning about climate litigation, learning about the fundamentals of this case. And I truly have come to the place that I really believe this is a systemic issue, and this is a problem with our government. And, you know, the fossil fuel industry has for a long time been pitted as the evil one, rightly so. They are polluting, are destroying our planet, but they're being allowed to do it. Someone's allowing them to do that and deregulating, laws and bylaws that is allowing them to do what they're doing, and they're being subsidized, as we just discussed. And so, you know, I think this case has really honed for me that as citizens, as people, yes, there's a lot of things that we can do individually to take individual responsibility, but without having these systemic changes that are so urgently needed within our government to get us off of fossil fuels and to reduce our carbon emissions, like, that's the only chance that we have. And it requires us holding our elected officials accountable, from our school boards all the way up to our presidency. You know, these are all officials that are there, supposed to be protecting us and to be serving our best interests. And so I really hope that this film and this story and, you know, the messaging from the case is invigorating to people, and that they can use what they're learning from this and have more speaking points and talking points, and can understand, you know, that, I think for so long, the focus has been on the fossil fuel industries. And, you know, as Julia used to tell me very early when I was working with her, that these whack-a-mole approaches of fighting a pipeline and, you know, fighting a coal power plant, or, you know, these individual little things, they don't amount to anything now. We can't fight each little thing. As soon as we, you know, strike one down, there's 10 new ones that have popped up. And so this really needs to come at the government level. We need our courts to step in now and be that balance of power. And, you know, they're supposed to be be our, our equal branch of government that that tells the government, no, you can't do this when you're harming its citizens.
I'm very glad you talked about it as a systemic problem, and I love that parallel, the whack-a-mole approach, because I think you're absolutely right that's what we've been trying to do, and somehow we've got to create system change. I mean, this is much too drastic and threatening to our future that little whack-a-moles aren't going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, you're a PhD scientist. How did you start off? How did your scientific background get you to be the person documenting this journey?
So I have a PhD in neuroscience, and I did preclinical basic research in Europe for 16, 17 years. And my focus was on stem cells. And I was working in the stem cell field at a time when I, from afar, I was working in Europe and watching what was happening with our politics here in America around science and scientific topics. And during the Bush-Gore election, this was really a period in our country's history where science was incredibly denigrated, and stem cells were a hot button political topic that people were voting on and discussing with very little knowledge or awareness or understanding of what actually stem cells are. So this was a moment in my scientific career where I realized that we as scientists really need to be communicating to the general public about what we're doing. It's part of our obligation. I think as public servants is to be providing some of this knowledge and information to the general public. So I got involved in an interdisciplinary EU grant where we were creating traveling science fairs around Europe and really talking to the public about basic scientific topics, as well as neurodegeneration and how stem cells can be used to rehabilitate, et cetera. And then that led to me just wanting to kind of explore how could I dive a little bit deeper into the storytelling aspects. And I found this program in Montana State University that was specifically seeking folks with graduate degrees in the sciences to teach them how to be producers and directors of scientific content. So I came to Montana to get my MFA in science and natural history filmmaking. It was sponsored by the Discovery Channel. And that was kind of my launch into the film world and using that form of media for storytelling. And I kind of see a parallel between complicated scientific topics and the story that I told in Youth Gov. I think it doesn't really matter if it's scientific topics or it's legal framework or legal topics. They're complicated and they're sometimes hard to digest. And so, trying to find storytelling tools and mechanisms and bringing in the human face and the human connection to these stories has really been my goal and my storytelling efforts. And so that was kind of my sideways journey into this.
You really did an extraordinary job of doing that, of making a very emotionally compelling and yet incredibly scientific and the most clear explanation of the science that I've ever seen, and doing it just in such a remarkable way. And so I salute you for your journey. I kind of made the same choice. I was also a child activist from very young age, trying to save our planet from nuclear destruction. And I love physics and science, and yet I decided, well, look, the world doesn't need one more invention as much as it needs us to invent a new system for a new system we're so advanced in our amazing science, reaching out to the universe, and so backward in our way of running government and interacting and doing the things that are essential for our survival. I said, I can't put my energy, as much as it'd be fun to do new scientific, and fun experiments and all that. I've got to put my efforts in figuring out how we communicate to do just what you're doing. How do we wake people up and show them that the crucial need for, and then a better way to run our world. So thank you for that. I noticed there are a lot of questions piling up, and I wonder if at this point we ought to open to questions. Unless before I do, is there anything else that you want to say that you haven't said yet, or should we throw it to questions?
Well, I can make, I think one point that I always like to talk about is the bipartisan nature of this story. I think a lot of people often, climate change has been politicized and has been dividing this country for a long time. And I think it's time to change the framing around that conversation. And that's one thing that I also am trying to do with this story, is to really highlight what every administration going back 60 years has known and has willfully done. And that includes President Carter, that includes President Obama, who so many people have called our climate president, and yet he positioned us in the world as the largest oil and gas producer in the world. And I really hope that people, I really hope that we can stop talking about Republicans against Democrats and conservatives against liberals. This is a human problem, and this is a governmental issue, and this is not a partisan, that we should not have a partisan divide on this. So that's one part of the messaging, I guess, that I always like to kind of bring up, because I think it's really important, and it's an important piece of our story and our history as America.
So crucial. I was stunned to see, you had Obama on there saying the most beautiful, powerful statements about how this is our moment. We have to do this. We will do this. We must absolutely make the priority saving the environment and our future of our kids. And such a beautiful statement. And then the next one, you see him out there in the field with the oil lobbyists saying, I got us to produce more oil and gas than anyone in the world. And I don't think it could be because he's just a liar, but I think it's just because that's this broken system we're in that forces even good people to do bad things. And so I think you've got a powerful story there to move it forward. Well, Sahara, any other comment before I throw it to general questions?
I would just say that to anyone watching this, if you have not seen the film, I highly, highly recommend it. The first time I watched it, I was with Avery, a fellow plaintiff, and we got to see it in a little movie theater, which was really cool. And we were just sitting there, and it was incredible. And I remember talking to her after, and we were both like, wow, we felt really well represented in it. And we both cried many times in it also. So I highly recommend if no one has seen it.
Yes, right at the top of this chat window, if you scroll up to the top, you'll see we pasted in where and how you can watch it. Maybe we'll paste that in again at the bottom. And always in these chats, there's 3 little dots to the right of your name in the chat window that you can click on to save the chat to your computer. So you don't have to write it all down right now. So with that, let me throw this back to Melanie to field the questions.
Thank you, Arthur. And I just want to do a very sincere thank you for this eye-opening, incredible documentary, Christy. I mean, I feel like just that $2,000 of my tax money per year going toward this, I think that puts the weight back on us. I think people are too quickly saying, oh, they're doing this, they do that, I'm one person. And the fact that I'm actually giving money for this to happen, for my air to go, for my water to go, for this fossil fuel thing to continue, and the subsidies and the amount of money, the giveaway money we're giving, and where people are like, oh, we're grateful for these little checks that we're getting in to help us, and the fossil fuel is being supported this much by our tax dollars. Is just, I hope that people take that knowledge in, and sometimes we even hear things and we ignore it. We just don't even let that sink in, and we go back to the old thing, that our pattern of thinking that this is what this is somebody else's problem. So thank you for this film. Sahara, thank you for taking this time out of your life to do this for this important message. And the fact that the young people, see kind of a horrible future is motivating for a lot of people, young and old, but doable. It's all doable. We see a way to do things through your film, and an easy way to do it. So I hope everyone here on this podcast will take action, and we'll talk about what Christy will want us to do in a little bit. But anyway, I would like to ask Yale. Yale had a nice comment he just wanted to tell you. Yale, if you could unmute and just say hi.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Christy, Sahara, Julia. This is a noble effort you've undertaken, and every little effort we make pushes the wheel forward. And I'm very hopeful. I'm a very active member of the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group, ESRAG, ESRAG, which is worth learning about if you don't know about it already. And I think step by step, we're going to move way forward. I'm very hopeful. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you, Yale.
Beautiful. And then we have John Hegarty, who's all the way in Australia.
Look, I've always found it very difficult to find the right way of thanking people for what they've done and objecting. I must say my understanding of the world and history is that we've never lived in better times. And the people who've done that, of course, are government. Every time I go on roads or whatever, I'm aware that government does it. Perhaps one other background, I was principal of several schools, and at one stage I wanted to change the way one of my best teachers worked. And I was saying, now, Jeanette, I just love the way you do this, that and the other. And she said to me, where's the but? In other words, she was getting ready for how I wanted her to change. I'd love in these films somehow, and thanks a million, by the way, and I also happen to go to a school where young people have done unbelievable things. But how do we say in a film, these are the wonderful things, but this is, we must get to this other aspect. How do we draw that fine line between giving credit to this unbelievably amazing world that our governments have led us to, but at the same time point out this dreadful problem that they're not doing enough with?
Well, I appreciate that question, John. I think that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with when we talk about climate change or we talk about progress. And I would agree with you that, fossil fuels have gotten us to where we are today. They have built and created a lot of what we're, they're a core feature of our technology. But I think one of the aspects that I tried to present in the film is that we've had moments in time where we've had the choices to go and turn to renewables. So for instance, I don't know if you've been able to see the film yet, and actually it hasn't been released outside of the US yet. So since you're in Australia, I'm not sure when you'll be able to see it yet, but there's a moment in time during the Carter administration, during the oil crisis, and Carter was, he was really amazing at highlighting conservation, at putting a lot of federal funds into conservation, not just renewable energy, but also conserving. And, he put solar panels on the White House, and he really had this goal of getting, I think, 2.5 million homes with solar panels at the end of his term. But then the oil crisis hit, and the government made choices. Instead of finding a way for our government to be independent from foreign oil and use renewables where we had the technology to do that, they made the choice instead to beef up the coal industry and to put all of the largest funding effort in supporting the coal industry at that point. So this was a moment in time, 1971, 50 years ago, where we could have transitioned and started a major transition off of fossil fuels. So I agree with you. They, technologically, they've gotten us a lot of things. We're flying all over the world. We're seeing wonderful things. But I would argue with you that this is the best that we've ever had it. I think a lot of people would argue with you that, here in America, we're really struggling with systemic racism and so many inequalities that are also linked to climate change. And so many young people are terrified of their futures and the future that they're going to inherit. They do not have the same opportunities and future that I had when I was their age. They're looking at a future that is going to look substantially different with you know, catastrophes and climate impacts that none of us experienced in our childhoods. So, you know, I think it has to be, the conversation has to be a little bit balanced with keeping those things in mind.
I'm certainly not sticking up for what's done. I'm just saying overall, the life we live is so much better than in the past in terms of medicine, scientific project, even government, so much better than it's ever been. So, and I think you've got it right, but certainly I'm not supporting the fossil industry at all.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, as a head teacher of science, I was always pushing the other way. So look, I just brought up this business that is tricky because governments do marvelous things and sometimes nobody ever thanks them. They just get, that's the point. We need to say, look, thanks for what you've done, but hey, somehow we've missed this. And it appears to me from what I've seen so far that you're totally on the right track. So thanks a million.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you. I just wanted to read a comment that Merle said that was quite interesting. She said, that's why I don't take a salary from our organization and live on Social Security now, so I don't have to pay federal taxes. Those of us who are privileged to do that, I own a house and a car, I have a great way to protest how the federal government spends money. Now, however, with Biden's new budget, I'm having another look. And then also Merle, I saw you had another comment, so let's go to Merle.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I've been mouthing off on chat. No, you know, you know, Arthur, that I worked in the White House for Carter, and I was actually there at that time. And I think Christy explained this very well. I mean, he really thought he was doing the right thing. And by the way, I started based on my White House experience when I left the White House after that year. I was on a special detail for a special program. I had 4 kids at home, so I couldn't move to Washington. So I started SunRep, the first Southeastern organization to promote solar energy, and that was in 1978. That's how early that goes back. What we didn't know about then was that these renewable energy tools, I call them now, were not going to save us, because they're still fossil fuel based, and the concept of embodied energy, cradle to grave. I lived in New Mexico, surrounded by terrible waste on our Native American reservations. I live very close to Navajo, and as you know, I do a lot of work there. So, and we're still trying to mine, particularly on our we're moving closer to our public lands now. And so we know about this. Renewables are not going to save us. And so one of the new things that's happening in the world right now, and it's beginning in Montana, by the way, with a small group of citizens, is to talk about the fact that we have to get ready for a different future. And frankly, Indigenous stories and Indigenous storytelling is the best, as far as I can see, as a white privileged woman, is the best way to start thinking about a future and how that future might look as we live differently past this industrial civilization, right? I love this lawsuit, as I said, because it's focused on something that isn't focused on renewables. Because we've got to, that's a distraction now. I don't know how we're going to get the word out about embodied energy so that people understand the waste stream, particularly, which I'm surrounded by here. I love this, and I love the film because it's about young people. And I wanted to mention that we are doing a film series. I hope if we can all be together in Santa Fe in midsummer, and we're collecting these kinds of films that give us such hope for the future. We're beginning to collect these, and I want to make sure that we can get a copy of this and have this into our film series. Also, I wanted to mention one last thing, which is I love the fact that this is about the kids we actually, one of our partnerships is with a youth group at the United Nations that's all about, frankly, regenerative agriculture and how to fix the soil and how we're going to learn to grow food. But I want to make sure they know about this film, and when I get offline here, I'm going to send them information about it. It's a wonderful thing that you've done. It's a wonderful lawsuit. I love it. Thank you so much, everybody.
Merle, that's beautiful. Yes, and that would be great if she could be part of the series, Merle series. Yeah, a beautiful future, a different future. It doesn't have to be scary. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and we take an example from Indigenous folks that have already lived that way. This is great news. Okay, so looks like Mike Caruso, you have a question. If you'd like to, or comment, go right ahead.
I'd like to thank you, Sarah and Christy, for a great presentation. And I would like to urge you, if you have not already, I know down in Eugene, I'm just up the road a bit in Dundee, Oregon, there's very active Rotary groups, Rotary clubs in that area. And in the past few years, Rotary has taken on or added as two of its main areas of focus, peace and the environment. And there are over 1.2 million members in Rotary, and several 100,000 of these are younger people. And they were located in over 200 countries and geographical areas. So I think this would be a great way to get the word spread and to perhaps give a booster shot to the environmental programs that Rotarians and Rotaractors are working on now, because your message is so critically important. So I don't know if you have had the opportunity to present in front of Rotary clubs, but if you can take advantage of that, I would strongly encourage it.
Thanks, Mike.
Anyone else like to go live and ask their question?
I just saw Richard's question about what our or the case's thoughts are on nuclear power. We didn't focus much on this in the story, and there's not a huge focus on this in the case. So just to give a little background, the plaintiffs have 21 experts who are providing the scientific and economic and technological expertise in this case. And one of the scientists is Dr. James Hansen, who is also a plaintiff on the case. And he is a plaintiff he's a guardian for future generations, which is kind of cool. But Dr. Hansen is a proponent of nuclear as a transition energy source. And I don't know enough about that to go into any detail about that. But all of the scientific declarations are on Our Children's Trust website, along with their court filings. So, if you're interested in learning more about some of the specifics of where he stands on that, you could definitely look at that. I'm not exactly sure, I know that that's his personal scientific view. I'm not sure how that plays into the lawsuit as part of the solutions that the plaintiffs are providing. But, the plaintiffs are asking for the government to come up with a climate recovery plan, but they're not telling them what those policies should be. They're providing technology assessments and what is possible and what the scientists are telling us are possible, but they're not telling the government this is the policies that you need to put into place. They're just saying, we need our carbon emissions to come down.
Now, Richard, would you like to add a comment to that?
Okay, just very briefly, I'm against nuclear power simply because I think, like the fossil fuels, it receives enormous subsidies. I think you need to look at the whole picture, from mining to the transportation, to the refining, to the building of the plant, to the decommissioning, to the nuclear waste, which we still don't have a problem. And then my personal venue is to get rid of nuclear weapons. And of course, nuclear power makes all the proponents, the raw materials for nuclear weapons, namely plutonium and heavy water and highly enriched uranium. So that's where I'm coming from. But I know I'm also a strong proponent of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, and it has in it, in the prologue, that nuclear power is okay. So I was just sort of curious as to your views on that as a solution.
Yeah, Sarah, have you guys talked much about, like, has Julia talked with you much about nuclear power? I feel like that hasn't come up so much in the conversations, and I don't think that the plaintiffs in their case is necessarily proposing nuclear power as a solution.
Yeah, it's definitely not a specific conversation we've had, although it's one that I would like to have because, you know, working with environmental communities, I've been learning more about different people's positions on that, and I have been working on trying to form my own with, you know, information and all of that. So it is a conversation that I'd like to have, though, for sure.
I personally agree with you, Richard.
Great. I do too. It's very disconcerting how we have this waste that everyone's like, oh, well, we'll just bury it. And I know that they put it in.
It's just like fracking too.
Yeah.
Like, where do we?
Yeah. So we're not ready, as far as I'm concerned, for anything nuclear. We need to, you know, knock it off, because that's not helping the situation. And we need to, you know, think outside the box, start creating other ways of living, other ways of doing things. We don't always have to have things exactly how they are in this type of the world that I'm in, you know. So we don't, you know, and just be smart. 7 generations, is this gonna damage the world 7 generations from now? Just think ahead a little. Gosh. Anyway, well, this was very, very interesting. Thank you.
Would I be able to say something?
Oh, yes.
This is Robert Reed from Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Hi.
And concerning the nuclear power plants. Now 4 of the provincial governments of Canada have decided they'd like to go into so-called SMR, small modular reactors, thinking that these might be a harm-free method of producing energy without increasing the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But there are actually 9 reasons nuclear power plants, even the small modular reactors, should not be used. And first, of course, is the danger of explosions like the ones in Chernobyl and Fukushima. So that's always a danger. They say with the smaller ones that would be less, but that's still a danger. So that's number 1. Number 2, they're actually very high cost. They cost much more than all the other renewable energies, the wind power and the solar panels and the hydro. It's very high cost, actually, to build these plants and maintain them. That's the second reason. The third reason is there's a huge carbon imprint of building them because so much cement is needed. So actually they do create send a lot of carbon dioxide into the air and being built. The fourth reason is the impossibility of 10,000 years of safe storage of the used and discarded radioactive waste, because they all end up sending radioactive waste to have to be buried somewhere. And they're having a great difficulty now with the waste from nuclear plants that have already been used. A fifth is the danger of transporting radioactive materials. There have been problems with trucks and so on going through various communities on their way to try to dispose of the radioactive waste somewhere. Number 6 would be the impossibility of 10,000 years, that's how long the radioactivity lasts, of safe storage of tailings waste at uranium mining sites. So it's not only where they try to bury the discarded waste from the plants, it's also at the original uranium planting sites, the same problem. Number 8 is, here's one. After eventual elimination of nuclear weapons, it'll be added to the burden on international verification commissions in all the countries to control all radioactive materials in those countries. If there are these plants, that'll be another area that these, to prevent recreation of nuclear weapons once they're abolished. Another problem if there's this radioactive material around. But finally, the most important reason really is that nuclear power plants will not be necessary to reach the goals of carbon neutrality. Okay, as the other energy sources, especially the evolving solar panels, will actually be able to supply all the needs to reach net zero by 2050. So it's not necessary, it's very expensive, and building them, it sends carbon dioxide into the air. There's the danger of all the radioactive material used in the uranium mines, transporting it, all these reasons. So it's just no.
I love how you beautifully went through those. I'll go quickly back to Arthur to close. So Christy has to go right this second. So Arthur, back to you.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Christy, and Sahara, both of you so much. This was really extraordinary. I salute you for an amazing film. I hope we can help promote getting it out more widely. And I do want to tell everybody that Karen Hendricks, who heads the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group, Rotarian Action Group, she is going to be our guest on May 19th. So you will be able to hear more about that. Any last word for Sahara or you before you have to go, Christy?
Yeah, I would just like to thank you so much to all of you for joining and being so engaged in the conversation. It's really fun for us to do live events where we, actually can have something interactive. So I really appreciate you joining and being engaged and participating in the conversation. And I also just wanted to let you know that as part of we have not released the film yet publicly. We're still in our film festival world, but along with our public release, we plan to launch a very robust impact campaign that will be focused on providing tools and resources and connecting communities and young people around holding their governments accountable with the climate crisis. So we're really looking forward to launching that and working with our partners. We're currently fundraising right now for that. So if it's something that you're interested in learning more about, you can definitely go to our website and get in touch with me. And if you want to learn more about the case, I would encourage you to go to ourchildrenstrust.org. They are also always looking for support for their cases financially and legally, and amicus briefs. And they have right now 7 current cases that are going on at the state level, and they are also supporting 20 cases around the world. So I would just encourage you just to follow us and learn a little bit more, and definitely go to youthvgovfilm.com, sign up, and we can keep you posted on updates and when it'll be available in your country, or what film festivals might be virtually available where you can still screen the film. Thank you so much, Arthur and Melanie. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. And we'll let you, if you have to jump off, maybe Sahara can stay on a few minutes.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I posted once again how they can watch it at the film festival right now, and there'll always be more film festivals. So Sahara, let's give you a little more time. We are at the end of our hour, but we can go a little bit over to give you a little bit more time to share with us some of your emotional responses to this journey and to what we've talked about today. How are you feeling right now? Are you feeling hopeful for the future?
Yeah, I think right now I think I am feeling very hopeful, especially, it's spring right now where I am, at least. And so the sun has been out, although it's been really hot, and I have been worried about the fire season this year. But aside from that, the sun is out and the birds are out, and I'm able to spend more time on hikes and walks and in the forest, and just appreciating what I have right now, and bringing me back to what I'm fighting for, has been bringing me a lot of hope. And right now in the case, we have a few avenues. It was pretty stagnant for a while with COVID. And that was for sure hard. We've definitely had some ups and downs in the case for sure. We were so close to trial, so close to getting our day in court. And then, you know, the day before, they told us that we weren't going to get our day in court. So I definitely had harder moments. But, you know, having this whole community with me where we can feel the ups and downs together has been really important, I think.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think with that, we'll express our warm appreciation and say goodbye to everybody. So thank you, everybody, well, for being part of this People-Powered Planet podcast.
World citizen, lift up your voices. Oh, you know we got something to say. All we need is the same directions, heading in one way.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and like this video.